All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mindgasms. So, I am Andrew, aka Skeptical Mindgasms, for the purposes of this video, and I'm going to talk about this article from the New York Post about the famous podcaster Joe Rogan claiming that the infamous pedophile Jeffrey Epstein was secretly a CIA or Mossad spy for various reasons. And I'm going to get into this article from the New York Post with along with a clip of Joe Rogan talking about that in his podcast and comment on it. So here we go. All right, Joe Rogan, Jeffrey Epstein may have been CIA or Mossad spy. And remember, the New York Post, it's not like it's not 100% reputable, but it does have some merit because it leaked that Hunter Biden laptop story that was censored on Twitter before the 2020 election, but turned out to be true. But they also report stuff that could be true, perhaps could not be true, like that scandal with Ezra Miller, the actor who plays the Flash, being trans and being accused of being a pedophile groomer, which it seems likely to be true, but might not be. So that's like, you can't always trust outlets like the New York Post, even if things turn out to be true, like the Jeffrey Epstein laptop story, as far as I know. So let's go into the article here. Go. Show this video first, actually. Okay. Joe Rogan, Jeffrey Epstein may have been CIA or Mossad spy. And let's full screen this here. Unmute. There we go. Oh, back a little bit.
Oops. Than that he was bringing them to parties.
No, I'm going to go back to the beginning here.
He was more than that he was bringing them to parties. Like it was an intelligence operation. Whoever was running it, whether it was the Mossad or whether it was the CIA or whether it was a combination of both, it was an intelligence operation. They were bringing in people and compromising them. And then when they would compromise them, they would use, whatever they had on them to influence their opinions.
Okay, so like he's making this massive claim, and extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, right? So yes, the whole situation with Jeffrey Epstein was totally fucked up. And as those of you who follow Joe Rogan's podcast know, he claims that one thing that Alex Jones was right about is that he told him about Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile island decades ago. Now, he never mentions when he says that, though, that the whole Alex Jones theory, that's connected to the elites who run the world with the black helicopters. I have the documents. They're the elites who run the world are also shape-shifting lizard people and interdimensional child molesters who use DMT and other psychedelic drugs to communicate with the aliens and get their orders from the aliens to collect all the babies together and drink their blood so they can live forever, bro. So he's way too much of a fan of Alex Jones. I don't take him seriously, so I just find him entertaining. But yeah, a lot of the Jeffrey Epstein shit turned out to be true, right? That he was literally running like a child sex trafficking pyramid scheme. And it seems like he had dirt on a lot of people because he had cameras in every one of the rooms in his house in Palm Beach that got rated. And the reason that people like Joe Rogan I love his podcast and I'm a fan of it. And I think some people, especially lefties, criticize him way too much. But he tends to get too conspiratorial too. But the reason some people are speculating about him being CIA is that, for example, if you've watched that Netflix documentary series on Jeffrey Epstein, they talk about how he had the cameras in his house and he filmed all these people, and he was taken to court for child sex trafficking case years before he ever went to prison, and then basically got the equivalent of a slap on the wrist. And so that's one reason to possibly think that he was actually CIA because he's actually an agent and compromising these powerful people so that they can have dirt on them. So the CIA is supposedly doing that because they want to have dirt on people. And then he was supposedly assassinated by the CIA in prison because they didn't want him to reveal that he was CIA or that he had dirt on these people. I'm not sure why that would be the case. And the rumors about him being Mossad, which is the Israeli intelligence, like the Israeli equivalent of the CIA, is that when his Palm Beach house was raided by the FBI, they found passports of various countries, including one of which was an Israeli passport. So this is what gives ammo to the conspiracy theories about him being a Mossad agent. But if you watch the Ghislaine Maxwell documentary series, which I think is just called Ghislaine Maxwell, you'll see that Jeffrey Epstein, he had various careers that he didn't have the credentials for at all because he was a fucking manipulative psychopath, right? And tricked people into giving him these high, powerful jobs and lots of money. So he, at one point, he was an arms dealer with Israeli arms dealers. So that's why he got an Israeli passport in the first place. And I think, in my opinion, that's probably all there is to that theory about him being Mossad. And like, there's no actual evidence, as far as I know, that he was actually Mossad or CIA. But like I said, I love Joe Rogan, and I think people criticize him too much. But I disagree with him about a lot of his opinions, like the COVID shit, for example. And I think he gets too conspiratorial sometimes. He has a tendency to get too conspiratorial. And I think that, the more likely explanation is, we just don't know. There are a lot of anomalies involved with the whole Jeffrey Epstein case. It could just be that he got off basically scot-free and suffered way less consequences that he should have because he was so rich and powerful and had connections with so many rich and powerful people. That doesn't require him being CIA or Mossad for all of this to have happened. I do agree that his quote-unquote suicide was super fucking suspicious, though, but to go from that to claiming that he was murdered also requires a lot of evidence. And there's a lot of circumstantial evidence that makes me convinced that I'm not convinced that he committed suicide, but I'm also not convinced that he was murdered because I need to see some evidence for that. So anyway, it says here on his podcast, Joe Rogan surmised that Jeffrey Epstein may have been a spy. They're kind of just summarizing what just showed here. Who was collecting information on the rich and powerful, including scientists at Harvard. He did have a lot of influence and palled around and partied with people like that. Epstein had donated $9 million to the Ivy League university, which Rogan called little money. Yeah, if you're a billionaire, then $9 million is not very much. But he supposedly had all sorts of conversations with famous scientists and shit like that, and was, I don't know, perhaps trying to influence them, or perhaps he just wanted to be friends with them because he seemed to have some sort of an interest in science, and he made small donations so they would be friends with him or something like that. Or maybe he did that to compromise them. And maybe if he was trying to get dirt on people, he was just doing that because he was a fucking psychopath and wanted to have dirt on people so he could have power over them. See, that there's, like, given the type of person it seems like he was, that's entirely plausible without having to add this whole CIA and supposed CIA and Mossad connection. But some on social media doubted Rogan's spy theory, like me. If you can't trust the MMA fighter turned D-list comedian turned MAGA podcaster, who can you trust? Oh, come on, dude. He's still an A-list comedian, and he's not MAGA. He's very anti-Trump. I know he famously or infamously, depending on how you looked at it, recently came out endorsing Ron DeSantis, who basically, just based on his rhetoric and the culture war shit, even though, as some progressive YouTubers I follow, like Kyle Kulinski, have pointed out, policy-wise, he's just standard Republican and is very similar to Trump in terms of that, and is against things that Joe Rogan is for, like legalizing weed, for example. But he's definitely not a fucking MAGA guy. He said repeatedly on his podcast, he recently, of course, because every time Joe Rogan even farts, it's a news story now. He recently called Trump a childish man baby, and he is a childish man baby. So even if he has, like, he's politically heterodox, and depending on who he's talking to, whether he's talking to a righty or a lefty, he'll sound more like a righty or a lefty because he's a very agreeable person. He's not gullible, but he's very curious about people's opinions. So that's what makes people think he's more right-wing than he is sometimes, and more left-wing than he is sometimes as well. Source, trust me, bro. Okay. So, yeah. All right. So, yeah, anyway, let me know in the comments, what do you think about this whole conspiracy theory? Of course, some conspiracy theories turn out to be true, like Joe Rogan has mentioned ones before that have turned out to be true, like the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which I believe it was a fake attack that the U.S. government staged in order to drum up support for the Vietnam War. And of course, in Iraq, there was the lie of weapons of mass destruction that the U.S. government used to drum up support for the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. To me, that's all there was to that. This 9/11 truth shit is bullshit too, because there's no actual evidence for that. What it seems most likely to be the case is that George W. Bush and Dick Cheney and company, they used this disaster to drum up support for countries that they already wanted to attack. And of course, the U.S. has been in bed with Saudi Arabia for their oil interests for years, although more recently that seems to be changing apparently. So they didn't attack Saudi Arabia, even though something like 13 of the 19 hijackers came from Saudi Arabia. But anyway, and a lot of conspiracy theories are false too. Like, for example, I've researched some of the conspiracy theory claims, like that book Best Evidence that Joe Rogan has talked about, that's all about the JFK conspiracy theory, and I'm not convinced. And I've seen like Mythbusters episodes and read other books arguing against it. And it seems to me like all the conspiracy theorists can point out is anomalies and unanswered questions. And then because it's exciting, people go from this to thinking, oh, it's all this, it's this convenient, exciting narrative life. It's a Tom Clancy novel, man. When in reality, the simplest, it's much more likely that there are just anomalies and unanswered questions, and people are unhappy with anomalies and unanswered questions, so they graft these conspiracy theories on top of them. But yeah, anyway, obviously the whole thing with Jeffrey Epstein was a tremendously fucked up situation, and still is, because recently I did a video about R. Kelly going to jail, and also Ghislaine Maxwell being sentenced to, I believe it was 20 years, yet she didn't have to give up her client list of all the rich and powerful people who Jeffrey Epstein was palling around with, and they suffered no consequences, even the ones we know about, like Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, Trump, and countless others who flew with him on his jet and palled around with him on his pedophile island and that kind of shit. So all of this is bad shit, but I don't see any evidence that Jeffrey Epstein was CIA or Mossad, was a CIA or Mossad spy. Again, it's exciting. That's why people believe conspiracy theories, but I don't think that's the case. Anyway, yeah, let me know what you guys think about this conspiracy theory in the comments, whether you think it's true or false. If you think it is true, tell me any evidence you have, because I'd be very interested to see that, because I'm highly skeptical of this, like I said. And yeah, thanks everyone for watching. Click that like button on the video, share it everywhere. Click that subscribe button. Click that bell to be notified when I come out with new videos. Probably next one will be a Tremor clip from one of my podcasts with Dusty and Chris about Putin. I think it was the one about Putin claiming that Russia is being canceled, like J.K. Rowling and some cancer culture bullshit. And also this upcoming weekend, we're hopefully going to do the movie chat on the documentary that we were going to do this weekend. I'm going to talk with Dusty and Chris, who I often talk with, about this documentary called Reversing Roe that's on Netflix, and is about the decades-long process that led to the overturning of Roe versus Wade, and how it wasn't even a political issue in the first place until evangelical Christians and the so-called moral majority, like Pat Robertson, etc., basically drummed up a whole bunch of paranoia and made it into a Republican position to be quote unquote pro-life, whereas that never happened before, historically speaking, in the US. So yeah, check that out, and check out my previous video, which is part 2 on silent covenants by the quote unquote evil critical race theorist Derek Bell. And as I go into that book, he actually talks about how black school desegregation was a mistake because it antagonized both racist Republicans and Democrats and made it harder to accomplish racial justice in the future, which he actually agrees with the conservative economist Thomas Sowell about. And in spite of that, I show a clip in the video of Thomas Sowell literally comparing Derek Bell to Hitler, even though they actually agree about that concept. So check out that and all my other videos, an upcoming one as well. And yeah, like I always say, oh yeah, check out the link for my Patreon page. The link is in the description of the video as always. And if you give me $10 a month, you can vote on future topics, books, and movies that I will discuss both by myself and with others. And any amount other than that is greatly appreciated as well, of course. And like I always say, always remember this: the funk cures all, and groove is in the heart. And this is a ridiculous conspiracy theory that Jeffrey Epstein was involved with Mossad or the CIA. The whole situation is fucked up, like I said, totally fucked up and evil, of course. But I need to see evidence to believe that Jeffrey Epstein was involved with the CIA or Mossad. All right, thanks again, everyone, for watching, and adios until next time.